Hello, Slack Pack. Welcome back to my channel, Cerius Blaq with Cerius Blaq. I am your host, CB, or Cerius Blaq. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing comic creator Paul Guinan. Paul has been a friend of mine for some years, but more importantly, I've been a fan of his for a lot longer. so, um, so Paul, please say hello to my Slack Pack. That's what we call the fans around here.
Hello, Slackback. Good to be with you guys.
Paul is in the area with me in Portland, and I got the chance to meet him back in my days of working at T-File Dark Horse, and I was enamored immediately by his creative process, but also the projects that he was presenting at the time kind of blew my mind. As somebody being new to comics and understanding how comics really transpire well beyond superheroes, Paul was one of the first creators that made me pay attention to what this industry really has to offer. So I am really glad to have him here with me today. It is an honor for me.
Thank you.
I'd love for you to tell the people a little bit about your history. I am going to put up a photo of you that doesn't necessarily represent his comic background, but I love this picture. And so if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about this picture and
Okay.
about you being in the industry. So there you have it, folks. Get it in your eyeballs because this happened.
This is a photograph of myself and my spouse, Ina Bennett, and we are, in this photo, we're doing a publicity photo for this show that was called Trek in the Park. And everybody's heard of Shakespeare in the Park. Well, this was live performances of classic Trek episodes. And this, so each summer they would do an episode. So they did Space Seed with Khan. They did Trouble with Tribbles. And this one is the episode where Spock's parents show up on the Enterprise. The episode Journey to Babel. I think of it as one of the best written episodes ever by Dorothy Fontana. It's got everything in it. It's got space battles. It's got aliens. It's got family drama, medical drama. Kirk gets to do his flying drop kick. I mean, it's just got
Yeah, he does.
It's got everything in it. It's fantastic. So that was a lot of fun. That was back in 2012. And CBS did a little package, a little segment about it on one of their shows, one of their magazine shows. And if you go on YouTube, you type in CBS Trek in the Park, and you'll get a whole little segment there to enjoy. So
Yeah. Slackers, I will put a link to that. I will go on YouTube and find it, and I will put it in the description of this interview so you can look at it. All right, so thank you for that. But let's go on to your actual comic creativeness. Let's talk about you getting into this business. As much as you're willing to share,
Sure.
and how you got
Sure.
started on this.
Yeah. Well, like a lot of comic book people, I love the medium since I was a kid. And in the 1980s, fresh out of art school, I went to the Art Institute of Chicago. I wanted to get into filmmaking, but at that time, filmmaking was analog and just too expensive to do. So I fell back on my first love of art love, which is comic books, and I realized, I could do giant epics, and the cost of it would be a pencil and paper. So I stumbled across some comics that were being produced right in Chicago at that time in the 80s. First Comics was the company's name, and I went over there and got myself a job as a staff artist. I was doing like retouching things, and at this time, again, analog, we would get original art sent in to us. We would put it on a stat camera, photograph it, and I would do things like touch up the negatives and stuff like that and get it prepared to be sent out to the printers. And at that time, that was my first professional gig in comics, being a staff artist.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I did while during that job was I did the retouch and reworking of Lone Wolf and Cub. And this was the first manga ever to be translated in the United States in the 1980s. And so I had the great honor of working on that project. And then at a certain point, I worked there for some years, and I decided to strike out on my own as a freelancer. And my first freelance gig was inking Tom Sutton's run on Grimjack, this comic written by John Ostrander, who created the Suicide Squad, and shows up in James Gunn's movie, giving the injection.
Yep.
Yeah, it was really fun. Ostrander's a dear old friend, and he helped me get that gig. I was a big fan of his. At that time, he was writing stage plays, and I would go see every one of his plays because they were always kind of genre things. They were like pirates and space adventures and stuff like that. And as a little kid, as a kid,
I would be all about that.
Yeah. Hell yeah, it's happening right here in front of me. So I then, after that Grimjack run, I did my own creator-owned series called Cargonauts, and it basically is Firefly. It's the characters and the dynamic. The only thing is that the race is swapped. So now the main guy is black, and his right hand woman is white, and so that's the only difference in the show. But they both come out of this war, this intense war, and they just want to be on the back eddies of the galaxy, and they're just doing like these smuggling runs and stuff like that. And the towns that they show up in are like basically Old West towns. Okay. Colonies on whatever moon somewhere or another.
Of course.
And that was a lot of fun to do.
Let me show my slackers that real quick. Here you go.
There we are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just so you can get an image of what he was discussing here, and
right.
So yeah.
That's just basic. That's the cast of Firefly right there. You got the genius engineer, young woman on the right. You got who in this series is Apache. Well, my in-laws are Apache, so I had to sneak them in there. And then the joking pilot, and then the two people on the left who are veterans who just want a quiet life. They just want to be just running their little cargo run
and get anything but that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
adventure ensues. So then after that, I started. Anand and I started putting together projects. We wanted to do something ourselves. Where Anand wrote it and I drew it, and we pitched this thing called Heartbreakers to Dark Horse Comics, and they loved it, and they published it, and I think we have a cover of
I might not, let me see. I might not have the right one, but this is
this is a combo. That's a later
one.
Right. But you get the idea. It's the female adventurers, and they're clones of each other, but they all have distinct personalities. And in this one, they team up with this other a book that Anna and I did together called Boilerplate. So we took two different characters and stories that we did, and had our own little sort of, Batman meets Superman kind of moment.
That's pretty cool. Bringing your worlds together, like
right.
I don't know that a lot of people get the opportunity to do that, with their own properties. So that must have felt pretty special.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. It was a lot of fun. So so Heartbreakers, there's the old school Heartbreakers when they were still in their paramilitary phase, and so these people go through phases, and so this was being published by Dark Horse, and at that time Anna and I were this husband wife power couple, whatever, and however you want to describe it, and Dark Horse paid for us to move from Chicago out to here in Portland. And it was quite expensive at the time. I think we were one of those very few people that they footed the bill, and that they footed the bill for that. And once we were out here, we worked for them for several years, but once we were out here, we just fell in love with the city, and we never went back to Chicago.
I understand.
Yeah. So while we were out here, we did Heartbreakers for Dark Horse, and then Anina became an editor at Dark Horse, and I think Anina worked there for some years, and I worked on Dark Horses. I think it was certainly their first ongoing series. It may have been their last because it was a beast to manage. It was Aliens, Colonial Marines,
Oh yeah, I
and
remember that.
so I did that series and the Terminator series, and then I you know I moved on from that. I had an opportunity to do a series for DC, to create a series for DC Comics, and this blew my mind because that's, as a kid, this is what I grew up on. I grew up on
Yeah,
DC Comics, and so to be asked to create a character for their pantheon was the ultimate. That was it. That was the bucket check. I was very, very honored, flattered. So I've always had an interest in Mexican culture, so I made sure that he was an Aztec and a time traveler. So that way I would be able to get in my history and my love of Mexica culture. And here's the covers for that. So the premise is that he's this industrial thief. He's not really a villain. That's just sort of hype.
right.
He's more like like Cary Grant in To Catch a Thief, or
Oh, so he's charming.
yeah, he's charming, and and he just steals from people who can afford to be stolen from, like tech
Yeah.
industries and tech things, and then through the course of the series, he develops these powers that allow him to travel anywhere in time and space. So he's basically like DC Comics Doctor Who, but he doesn't need a TARDIS. He himself can just project himself, and off he goes.
What's the significance of his costume here, and what's that thing he's holding?
So the costume is me being too lazy to draw human anatomy, so I wanted a silhouette costume,
Okay.
and so I just came up with a design that sort of echoes. You can sort of see it sort of echoes his rib cage and his abdomen
Yeah.
so it's this, and his clavicle or whatever is little. And so it's a sort of like an Aztec sort of interpretation of human anatomy. And then the thing he's holding is a keystone, and in the next cover over, you can see he's inserting the keystone into the Mexica Sunstone, and this is part of a whole storyline about these portals, these time portals that other time travelers use. He doesn't need it, but these other time travelers that he encounters use these as portals. And so the deal is that his dad was a Chinese physicist in the 1970s, California, and his mom was a Aztec noblewoman from Tenochtitlan in the years just before the Spaniards show up. And so during the course of the adventures, his dad travels back in time to and meets his mom, but knows that Spaniards are coming, and so takes her and her she's pregnant, takes her to that floating city that you can see behind him in the first issue, Chronopolis, where he's born. And so he's born out of time and space, which contributes later on to the powers that he has.
Damn.
So, and I love this character so much. This is one of the only things that would take me away from the project I'm working on right now, the Aztec Empire webcomic I'm working on presently, which is going to take years to complete. But the only thing that it would take me away is to revisit this character. And I would like to, because we didn't finish the editor, Archie Goodwin, who's a legend in the comic book industry, dear friend. He passed away during the making of during the series, and without his guidance, the series just closed it down. I mean, they gave us like one issue to put everything together, and it was a pretty rushed issue. And so the last scene is where his dad winds up in ancient Mexico, and it's like, oh, if only just a little bit more, I could have done, could have drawn some. But in retrospect, this is on the cover. This is when they put dates on the cover, 98. So back in 98, we didn't have nearly as much information about, archaeological information about the culture that it was there. It's just I wouldn't have had access to it. There was no internet,
Right.
It would have been really, really difficult to get a hold of some of this information that I need, and also consultants, because now I'm working on this Aztec series that I have dozens of consultants from Mexico and even a few from Spain. So in retrospect, I'm both sad that I wasn't able to get to that part of the story, but I'm also okay with it because I wouldn't have been serviced as authentically as if I had, as if I'm the way I'm doing it now.
Okay, so I mean, I think it's fair to say that Chronos then is kind of the precursor to what you're doing now. Like it sounds like you learned a lot with the little resources you had, and then really pulled it off. And then compared to what you're doing with Aztec Empire, which I can't wait for y'all to see. By the way, when I show you this, you will understand what he's talking about. It's a real deal, y'all. It really kind of paved the way for you to do this big project that you're doing now.
Yeah,
So that's really cool.
yeah.
Do
I've
you?
always
No, quick question. Do you happen to know if DC ever collected the Chronos issues? Like, could somebody still get it, or do we have to go on the back issue hunt?
Yeah, you have to do the back issues, get on eBay, whatever your thing is. They didn't never put together a collection. I had some issues with the coloring at the time, so if they collected it, I would lobby hard to have it recolored. Not with that airbrush kind of thing that people like to do a lot now. I would still want it to be flats, but different choices. And I think you can see it on some online places like Comixology, I think, or DC's own
app?
thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So I think you can see it there. And but I'd love for it to be collected, and I'd love to to take another stab at it at some point.
I would love for you to take another stab at it too, because that sounds interesting as AF. I'll just say that. Now I was gonna, and sorry, actually, I cut you off a second ago. You were gonna say something.
Oh no, keep
you're
going.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I wanted to go into some of your other projects, but since we are talking about Aztec Empire now, would you mind if I brought that up now and showed the Slack pack some of that? Okay.
Yeah,
I will go back, but first and
Yeah.
foremost, let's look at the cover, guys, and then we'll have Paul weigh in on this beautiful colors and yeah,
So,
give us the lowdown.
So this is a project I'm working on right now. It's a web comic called Aztec Empire. I'm doing it with my dear friend David Hahn. What happens is that and if you go onto our website bigredhair.com, you can see the process. We threw down some pages about the art process, and so the way it works is I research it, write it, and then I do thumbnails or layouts. Just elaborate stick figures kind of stuff. And then the layouts I send to David Hahn, and then he pencils and inks, and then it comes back to me for coloring. And it's in the coloring phase that I do all of the murals and the textile designs and all of that kind of stuff. And that is all deeply researched. Every single image on the wall, everything that they're wearing has to be researched very intensely.
Okay. And speaking of layouts, here's one now, so we can.
So this is the palace of one of Tepwa. He's one of the Montezuma's top generals and an advisor to the emperor. And this is his wife, who is the daughter of Moctezuma. And he's not exactly next in line to be emperor, because they had a sort of electoral process to select the new emperor when the old one died. But he is definitely in the running for it. Of course, events will change that. But in this, you can see the murals. His cloak design is specific. This guy coming to visit him has a symbol on his chest. All these things have to be researched and accurate. You can't just make any of this stuff up.
No, I mean you could, but you shouldn't. and it's important that you didn't, and that's why I love talking about this project. One other thing that I noticed too is, like, I love in the very middle panel there, the emotion captured on both of their faces in this moment.
I really love what David is doing with that in regards to that. He was pretty much my first and only choice to draw this, and we had been talking about doing this since we met, which is like 30 years ago. At least. I'm 40 maybe. No, 30 years ago.
I'm a big fan of his work too, so I really appreciate
he had this really clean line approach, and then in the coloring, as I threw down these colors and whatnot, I kept I kept it all cuts. No, there's no blends, because
Okay.
that would just be another layer of headache. To have all this, like airbrushy kind of stuff. I wanted it all to have this nice, crisp quality. And as you can see on this page, a lot of my compositions are proscenium. They're very, 90 degrees to the subject, to echo the kind of codices that Mesoamerican, basically, cartoons. I mean, they even have word balloons and everything. It's like the Mesoamericans
Hmm.
were the first people to invent. They invented comics.
You
And
know what? That's facts right there. Yeah.
so so yeah. So this is so, like, for instance, just as an example, um, in the second panel on the left side is a brothel, and the god of the patron saint, or deity, or however you would describe it, of people who indulged in sexual pleasure,
Hmm.
is on the wall there, and that actually, and so, you have to research that and make sure that that's all correct. And that actually came out of the idea of him going by a brothel. Came out of the idea of Odysseus being, the sirens were calling him, and so
Okay.
that's my little sort of reference to the sirens.
I was actually just going to ask you about the mural and all because I can, my eyes were drawn to it, and I saw the detail, and I was like, wow, this is
Hmm.
kind of breathtaking.
Hmm. Hmm.
I wanted to also get your insight on this because like here I see a little bit more of the architecture as well that is
Yes.
highlighted, and that was pretty cool. Sorry, excuse me, but if you wouldn't mind just giving us some
Sure.
insight on your process on this one too.
Sure. This is the Mexica, which we call Aztecs, just colloquially, were ran this island city called Tenochtitlan, and everything was in Mesoamerica was city states. So that was
Okay.
their city state, Tenochtitlan, and so we have plenty of archaeological stuff around outside of Tenochtitlan. So we have even plenty of Mayan sites in the Yucatan, things like that. But
Okay.
since the Mexico were on this one island, and the island was sieged and destroyed and leveled by the Spaniards, there's pretty much no architectural information and archaeological information about the architecture and whatnot. But there's a couple. They found a few little temples here and there throughout the city. Every time somebody digs a hole in the city for whatever, sewer, electric, whatever it is, they'll find something. Because it's Mexico City's built on top of Tenochtitlan. So
That makes sense.
so in the around 1980, they were digging a hole, and they found this particular sculpture that they knew was sat at the base of the main temple. And so this blew everybody away. And at that time, they had the political motivation or whatever uh, to tear down a several block section of downtown Mexico City, which had colonial architecture. I mean, it was beautiful. These were beautiful buildings, but
Why
they,
did?
but they, but they decided, hey, you know what? It's more important to find this temple and to make that, the focus of this little area of downtown. So they dug up this area. They found the main temple. You can, I
Okay.
mean, it's in ruin. And then next to the main temple was this place called the House of Eagles, and it was like essentially a military headquarters for the Mexica. And they found the foundation of it. And so this is based on an actual site, one of the very few Mexica sites that we know of. I mean, that we found, that we discovered. And
Huh.
so I visited the spot in Mexico City. Perfect timing. It was in 2019, just before COVID hit,
Hmm.
and Anna and I went down there to do this research trip, um, and took a million photos and visited with the friends that we had made through social media. This is before that guy took over that that
Yeah.
site, and so we went down there, took a bunch of photographs, and then when I came back, I had one of my archaeology friends who works for the National Archaeological organization down there send me the the drawings, the archaeological drawings, so that I could make as best a recreation of this building as possible. And so that included, like in the second panel, you see these benches, and those benches managed to survive when they dug it up. Even the polychrome, the red and the blue and the white, some of the paint was still intact. And so I got a hold of all the drawings for that and the photographs that I took, and made sure that that this was all accurate. All the benches are exactly the figures that are on them, and those two eagle statues. Yes. They have them in the museum that's on that site. So those are just basically just decorative figurines. And so I was able to recreate the Aztec eagle figures, the murals, the bench designs, and then of course the cloaks and the tassels that they wear off their hair. So this is insanely researched, and just recently, just about a month or so ago, the leading archaeologist of Mexico, this guy named Leo Lujan, he saw the recreation that I did, and he praised it as excellent. And that is as good as it gets. It's like it just doesn't get better than that. It's like if Jack Kirby told your superhero comic is awesome. It's like what? Mind blown. So all these years of research paid off. I've done my homework, and I make sure to include everybody who's been consulting with me on this project. Wonderful Mexican friends. I have them listed in title cards on the episode things, and then when the book comes out, I'm going to have an even longer list of people to thank. And it was the trip we took down there. It was for the reason we went in 2019 is that it was the 500th anniversary of when Moctezuma met Cortez, and they even know the location where they stood at the time. And so we went down there for that 500th anniversary for that purpose. And because I had developed so many friends through social media, every single lunch, every single dinner, we were with all these different people.
That's amazing.
And not just historians and archaeologists, anthropologists, but also artists. Like we also hooked up with people who were comic book artists. It was a really special trip.
That sounds amazing, and I bet you the food was good as hell too.
Oh, well, I mean, and when you have locals, so let me take you to this place, and then they take you like through this corridor and then down in this like places that you would not think of or see, as you walk down the street, because there's plenty of restaurants that have their nice window displays and we serve this, that, and then of course there's plenty of trucks and stands and stuff like that, but these literal hole in the wall joints, that serve this
those are always the best ones, man. I try to tell people that all the time. Real quick, when you were giving us the background, you mentioned this organization, and obviously this is important to you. Have you been working directly with them as well with this project?
Yeah, not in an official capacity, but certainly in like the people, the employees. Like for instance, when we went down there, that House of Eagles that we were looking at, the architect, the archaeologist for that took us on a tour. So he gave us all kinds of information. And then, as I was just mentioning, I have people who work for this organization send me materials, and this is all public domain stuff. I mean, it's their national. It's like having a friend at the Smithsonian, who can send you stuff, and even though the Smithsonian itself may not be, you may not be working with them directly, like their director of whatever, but the people that work for them are helping me out as consultants on this.
That's fantastic. So. That is fantastic. That kind of answers the question I had too. Like, how often do you stay abreast of all this new information? But you already have told me you're up to date and like constantly watching, like for updates and what comes out of this area, because I'm sure as you're still working on this project, you're constantly adding to it.
Yes, I mean, like I have, like an intense folders of stuff that I will get to, that I will use in the future as the story progresses. So yeah,
Okay.
for instance, just last year, a couple years ago, they found a section of this palace that was not Moctezuma's palace, but another lord, and they dug out some really cool looking stuff that I totally save that photo, save that photo, save that photo that I will use because at one point in the story the Spaniards are housed in this palace that they've just recently discovered. So that's information that's only a couple years old. And also, like, there's a scene in episode 5 where Moctezuma goes off and meditates in this room, and they found that room just 5 years ago, or just half a dozen years ago. That's new information, and that's never been put into a book, or let alone a comic, that I'm working on. So I'm actually, like, for instance, at House of Eagles, that's the first attempt any artist to recreate the interior. I mean, there's been exterior recreations. They have like a model. They have a big model of Tenochtitlan in one of the museums. So they have done an exterior recreation as a little model. But this is the first time that it's ever been depicted. The interior has ever been depicted, which is probably why this archaeologist is so excited by it. So yeah, it's interesting how this new material just makes all the difference in going to depict this stuff. It's something that, like we were talking about earlier with Kronos, I wouldn't have had access to that kind of information.
That's a very good point. Yes, that's exactly what you mean. And quick sec, slackers, my audience, just need you to understand something. I'm sitting here like this because I am internally trying my best not to nerd the fuck out. Because that is, I am like geeking out inside right now just hearing about this, because it's hitting so many wheelhouses for me. Because I love history, I love comic books, but I also love, like, when people do their research, I know that it's going to mean a lot more to me, and so I'm trying to be chill right now.
Well, actually, being a geek is one of the main reasons that I took on this project, because I've always been a history buff. I've always been a science fiction buff, and so this story is as close in our human reality to an alien first contact, because we know that Asia and Africa and Europe and whatever, they all knew about each other and traded and benefited from that trade and knowledge and culture. And the Americas, they were literally on the other side of the world and thought it was their whole world, and we didn't know about it. So when they finally meet, I mean, it's as alien first contact as you can get, complete with surrealist imagery, of like all this color and kaleidoscopic designs, and then these strange beings from another planet show up in this armor, and they're bearded, and it's just, the whole thing was, both sides thought the other was super weird. So it's all, I've always been fascinated by that real life sci-fi kind of.
That is real. I don't think I've ever thought about it that way. That is so true, because, like, just landing on the shore looking completely different from anything you've ever seen or experienced in your life would be a moment. Like, I guarantee somebody didn't make it out of that just from looking. Just like somebody passed out. Paul, I want to make sure that, like, as much as I could listen to you talk about this webcomic all day, which I will put the link directly to the webcomic in the description as well. I encourage y'all to go look at that for sure. But I do know that you have a lot of other stuff that you've worked on in the past too. So I'm gonna pull up your portfolio a little bit, and if you just want to, like, pick a couple pieces that you wouldn't mind telling people about,
Sure.
I will go to the page and scroll and start at the top here. But this is a wide variety of things, sir.
Right. So the top tiers are digital images that I did some years ago, before like you could just accomplish this kind of imagery with just by getting a filter. So what I would have to do is I would have to use a photographic basis. So for instance, like on the upper right there, that's me and Anina posing, and then I drew on top of it on a separate layer. Obviously, I drew on top of it what was needed. Similarly, with actually below that, with Harley Quinn and Joker is Anina as River Song.
I mean, come on.
So yeah, and then over to the left, the little food trucks are, we're across the street from our old Helioscope
right
studio.
Here.
Yeah, and so those are when food trucks were actual trucks. That's how long ago that was.
Yeah,
and
it's not the same now.
Trailers.
What is this? What is this?
That is Xander Cannon's Kaiju Max character.
Oh, that's right. I love that book.
And what happened was that the Chicago Comic-Con C2E2 was doing badges, of different characters, and they asked our studio to create a couple of badges. And of course, at that time, I was a huge fan of Kaiju Max, and so I said, I absolutely want to do Kaiju attacking Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what that's about.
That's a hilarious but serious book too.
Oh yeah, I mean,
like
right from the beginning,
it looks cute. It looks cute, but man,
it can get rough. It's really intense. It's really intense. I think that's the genius of Xander Cannon. He's an amazingly talented man. I've known him since he was in college. I miss him because I don't do shows anymore. So
I haven't seen him in a couple of years either. I think I saw him in Emerald City about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So
I miss hanging out with that guy. And then as you go down, it then breaks down into more traditional pen and ink kind of stuff. Like on the left, there's Kronos. That was an inventory cover that was never actually published. Where that's sort of my tribute to Nick Cardy, who's my favorite DC cover artist of all time. He did so many covers, thousands of covers for DC in the 60s through the 80s. And what you're looking at here is our essentially our website.
Yeah. Your website, which I can peruse through. But here, I just wanted to show some people some of the other stuff because, this right here is wild as hell.
That was done for Emerald City has this a charity book called Monsters and Dames. So that was done for Monsters and Dames. And what that is it's a scene from Mesoamerican mythology where this moon goddess on the left attacked the earth goddess there on the right. And things did not go well for the moon goddess. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I will say that. I would imagine. Quick little story from me, guys, just about one of these images here, because I see it's here. Quick story. One of the way that I met Paul was when I used to be the manager of a store called Things from Another World, and he would come in there and peruse and we'd get to talking. And around that time when I met him was his book Boilerplate came out, and it was a huge deal. And I was a fan immediately, and he had these prints, these large prints, and this was one of them from the book. And I was like, I gotta have that. And I was like, and he was so nice that he just let me hold on to it for a while. And I was gonna buy it from him. And then he knew I was broke, so he was like, yeah, just keep it. And I still think about that every day because I still have it. And it is one of my prized possessions. So I just wanted to say that.
Thanks.
But yeah, this is their website, and you can see they've got the biographies here, their appearances. This is a well put together website, by the way. I just want to point out. But you can see all of their works here. Like this actually is the link to the Aztec Empire web series here. But all information about Boilerplate and Frank Reed, which we're going to talk about in a second, Heartbreakers and Kronos can be found here. And like I said, the link will be in the description. I'll put separate links too, so you can find stuff easier, or just peruse the website yourself. But either way, we're gonna make sure that you get access to that. Is there anything else that you would want people to see right here on this website before I move on to the next book? Uh-oh, I can't hear you. Did I unplug my... I do that sometimes. Let me see. Wait, I think you're muted, Paul. I think you're muted, and I couldn't hear you. Okay, how about say something now?
Hello.
There you go. Okay, we got you back.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think I'm my earbuds losing juice.
Ah, okay.
It happens.
Yeah, it happens. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to. I want
Sure.
you to give a little. We'll do Frank Reed, and then we'll talk about Frank Reed, and then we'll move on to Boilerplate if that's okay with you.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Frank Reed was made after the success of Boilerplate, and it's not a sequel though. Both
No.
Boilerplate and Frank Reed are standalone, but like we did with Heartbreakers and Boilerplate, we do have mentions of Boilerplate in Frank Reed,
Yep.
and Frank Reed is mentioned in Boilerplate, so they take place in the same universe, so to speak. But what this is Frank Reed this is a pretty unique project, and it's, I think, Anina's best writing. We are so proud of this book. What this is there was a dime novel character from the 19th century, started around 1876, called Frank Reed, and it was the first science fiction periodical in world history. I mean, you could certainly make some cases about, the first science fiction novels, like maybe, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and stuff like that, 1818,
Right.
I believe. But this was the first magazine series. And the premise was Frank Reed is this boy genius who builds, during the first part of the run, he builds these steam-powered robots and vehicles, and then very quickly transitions to electricity. So he's building these electric airships. You can see one of these helicopter airships you can see in the upper right panel. Submarines, as you can see there, and land vehicles. I actually built right here. I built a model so that I could Photoshop it the way I've Photoshopped Boilerplates into history. So I have Photoshopped this vehicle into some of these adventures that Frank Reed has. And so
That's
all of the
awesome.
So aside from some of my own illustration work in it, almost all of the images are taken from this Frank Reed series, and of course I cleaned them up. They were in pretty bad shape. These magazines are from the 1880s, and I'm surprised that the few copies that do exist, because we went through not one but two massive paper drives in World War I and World War II. And the fact that some of these things are still around is just mind-blowing.
You keep getting lucky, man.
So what this is,
Aztec pieces being intact with the colors, and now you're able to find these old, scripts, and yeah.
Right. Well, so one of my favorite things about this Frank Reed series is that in Boilerplate, one of the things I've been themes that runs throughout my career, even through Aztec Empire, is dealing with colonialism and imperialism. And in these Frank Reed, the original dime novels books, he goes around the world, bringing enlightenment, or whatever to the dark corners or whatever, whatever nonsense, that these people thought that they were doing.
Right.
So in the original context of the series, he's a hero. He's going around fighting in Africa and in Asia and whatnot. And it's just wild to see this attitude of that era. So what we did is we decided to not, pun intended, not whitewash, but deal with his what he was doing, but but comment on it, but like say, hey, this is not cool. Wait a second, what's going on here? And so we were able to do this like sort of a political commentary, satire even, using this character as our avatar, this kind
That's
of
very
like
smart.
anti-hero kind of
That was
thing.
very smart. Very
And
smart.
actually, there's one of the more unusual sort of, or striking examples of the writing in this. This was written by a Cuban immigrant, and he has Frank Reed. His sidekick is this black guy named Pomp, and he has all of Frank Reed's sort of abilities. He can obviously he can repair Frank Reed's vehicles, his airships and his tanks and his submarines and stuff like that. And he's described in the dime novels as being this expert horseman and a crack shot. And it was like, at the time, this guy was insanely progressive black character in American fiction. It was like, what is going on here? But unfortunately, you can't really escape your era completely. Unfortunately, the character, the illustrations of him are a little. Oh no! Are a little bit much, and the dialogue is these dems those kind of dialogue. Yep. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting how, like, the writer was trying to do something progressive, but from our context, it fell flat. It didn't quite work.
Right. It got a little bit of that Lovecraft writing in it.
That's right. Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Let me give them a better. I actually have something from you that. Yes, there we go. Because you did mention it. Yeah.
Right. So that's what you can see here is I built that so that I could do these illustrations, which are based on. You can see the actual real dime novel illustrations on the upper left and lower right of this image. And then in the book, there's at least half a dozen photographs of this vehicle in these locations around the world. And the best part about pulling photographs for the Frank Reed project and also for Boilerplate is that these images are long in the public domain. I don't have to worry about finding a usage right.
Yeah, that's cool. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, like, correct me if I'm wrong, Slackers, when you're watching this, but the design of this also looks like something that ended up in The Legend of Korra. Because they went to the steam age in the sequel to Avatar, and there were a lot of vehicles that kind of look like this. Like, I could see Chief Beifong driving that, along with that really dangerous needle at the front.
Yeah. Well, almost all of Frank Reed's vehicles had this spear in front of it for whatever reason.
For whatever, yeah. I got to pierce something.
Right. And also a cow catcher at the same time. So.
Right. Yo, here's a question. What happened to this dude in the bottom right corner?
He's an outlaw. Oh, you can see Pomp in the red hat.
That's Pomp?
Using his rifle skills. And then Frank Reed is, because he's an inventor and his vehicle's electric. He's using an electric whip. So he's like rope kind of thing.
I see it. I see it now. Okay.
Because these are outlaws, in the Wild West. I mean, these things were written when the Wild West was happening, when all that stuff was going down. That's when these things were written. It's pretty wild to think, in the 1870s and 80s, about how on the East Coast, like Manhattan, Lower Manhattan was fully built in. They buildings multiple stories tall. They had elevators. They had like subway system. They had elevated trains. They had typewriters and telephones, all that stuff. And then, meanwhile, out in the West, Custer is being killed at Little Bighorn. Wild Bill Hickok is being shot in Deadwood. Indians are living, the Native Americans are doing their, living the way that they had lived for centuries.
Right.
And so the juxtaposition of that of East and West is wild during that era. And that was a big appeal for me in working on these books is that kind of disconnect.
Huh. That's some great insight that you offered. I like that. Gosh, like you really, man, you say you're a history buff, you are not fucking around.
So this is my baby, and it started out as I was going to do a graphic novel of it, and as I started working on the pages, I realized, no, it just needs a different approach.
Yeah.
And so I brought in Anina, and together we put together this book, which is meant to suggest like a history book, an illustrated history book, the kind that I grew up on, like those Time Life histories of this, that, and the other, which columns of text, but tons of images, so that you're not bored by what you're reading. You can exciting images and stuff like that. And so the premise here is that this inventor who lives in Chicago, because I spent my whole first half of my life in Chicago, one of his relatives is killed in combat, and he vows to build a soldier so that no other people will die, so that nations will use soldiers, these robot soldiers, to resolve their conflicts. But during this time, this was before even the Spanish-American War. Well, around the same time, 1890s. So this is definitely before World War I. World War I changed people's attitudes about war. And so during this time, before that, the idea of replacing the stalwart infantrymen with a robot is dishonorable. Where's the glory in that? So he never goes into production, although a few commanders do wind up using him, to sort of as a novelty kind of thing. So he participates in all of the conflicts of the era. Like he charges up San Juan Hill with Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders. That's one of his first combat things. And then at the end of his run, he disappeared. He's fighting in World War I, and he mysteriously disappears. Because I always enjoyed that kind of an ending, especially because I didn't really want to kill the guy off. So he disappears, and then that cover we saw earlier, Heartbreakers meets Boilerplate. The premise of that is the Heartbreakers find him in a crate and put him back together again and have another adventure.
What? That's okay. I kind of dig it. And this is definitely, as he mentioned, like this is him, as you can see, sci-fi history.
Mm-hmm.
He's managed to combine them. I do think that I certainly applaud, because this is an image from the book, y'all, just so you understand what you're seeing, as well as this one here. I applaud the fact that you didn't just make it a graphic novel, and I think it could totally work as a graphic novel. Like there's a lot of story to be told here, but the way it presented made it more special to me because it feels more like, I don't want to say like a collector's item, but it's more than just a piece of nerd propaganda. It's got some depth to it.
Oh yeah, I mean, like in this Ben and Frank Reed, it's the protagonists who are fictional, but all the history surrounding them is all accurate. It's all right. This is not an alternate reality; it's an additive reality. Right.
It's like look at this, y'all, because we were just talking about this era here, and then like you've got like just imagine that he's actually there during this battle.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I wanted people to really believe that this creature existed, and we even jumped through some hoops to explain why you've never heard of him, about how he fell into obscurity. But we're resurrecting the memory of this robot.
Dude, that's awesome. I mean, you can. Yeah. I hope y'all understand now why I'm geeking out a little bit, like why I really like this stuff. This is, because this is give me a second.
Hey.
Okay. Give me a second. So gosh, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us and explaining. Like, I feel like these are all of the questions that I've always wanted to bug you about, and now I get the privilege of having this documented for me for all of history, and I get to share it with other people. So that's cool. But I do want to move to one other thing.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to take a quick break, and don't leave the studio. And then I'm going to set up, because now I think it's time for the bonus round where you're going to do 10 questions with Cerius Blaq. Okay. And I will explain that in a second. We're going to end this segment here of awesome information. And don't leave the studio. I'll be right back. Slackers, again, look for everything that we talked about here in the description. There will be links to everything and links to his X page, his Twitter page, or whatever. So you can follow him there and get updates on the web series, and then as well as whatever else he might get into, because we don't know, right? I mean, look at everything else he's doing.
Ground Zero is Anna and I our website,
the website as well.
Yeah, so you go there, and that's like kind of like a link tree. It'll you can just start exploring and.
Yeah, I'll put it in order like that. Website first, and then socials and stuff like that. But even sections of the website for things we've discussed.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Thank you very much. I will see you in a second, sir. We're going to get on out of here.